for that service. Divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, our Lord and Master Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti, Pastor Vrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Praise to Ko Sri Krishna, Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita, Shri Gadadhar, Shivasa, Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shama Sundar Radha Kundalini Gauranga ki jai. Srimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Vrindamai ki jai. Shri Ganga Yamuna Saraswati ki jai. Shri Navdeep Dham Shri Mayapur Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Nilachal Kshetra ki jai. Shri Mathura Dham Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Hari Nam Mahamantra Yuga Dharma ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lord Sri Shri Hanuman Shri Gauranga. Who was okay. Yours okay? So we'll kind of sit through the mantra. I think it will be done by 12:30, right? So I'm going to move things along quickly. I'm not going to go through the sitting numbers. Normally I would do that. Mandara Kunda Kurubot Pala Champakarna. Mandara Kunda Kurabot Pala Champakarna. Naga Naga Baku Ambuja Parijata. Naga Naga Baku Ambuja Parijata. Vandera Chitti Talasaka Baranena Tasya. Vandera Chitte Tulasika Baranena Tasya. Yasmin Stapamana So Bahumanayanti. Yasmin stapa masimana sobahu manayante. Okay, so we have, we'll split it up to the gentlemen and to the ladies.
Mandara kunda kurabotpala champakarna.
Mandara kunda
kurabotpala champakarna. Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Gandhe chitta tulasika bhavanena tasya.
Gandhe chitta tulasika
bhavanena tasya. Yasmin sapasu manaso bahumanayanti.
Yasmin sapasu manaso bahumanayanti.
Mandara kunda kurabotpala champakarna.
Mandara kunda kurabotpala champakarna.
Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Gandhe chite tulasika bharanena tasya.
Gandhe chite tulasika bharanena tasya.
Yasmin tapasu manaso bahumanayanti.
Yasmin tapasu manaso bahumanayanti. Ladies?
Mandara kunda kurabotpala champakarna. Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Gandhe
Gandhe tulasika bharanena tasya.
Yasmin tapasu manaso bahumanayanti. One more, lady.
Mandara kunda kurabotpala champakarna. Unnaganaga bakulambuja parijata.
Gandhe chite tulasika bharanena tasya. Yasmin tapasu manaso bahumanayanti. Someone, you can read the synonyms, and I'm going straight to the translation in the interest of time. So, although flowering plants like the mandara, kunda, kuda baka, utpala, champaka, arna, punaga, nagesara, bakula, lily, and parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi. For Tulsi is given special reference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. Purport. The importance of Tulsi leaves is very clearly mentioned here. Tulsi plants and their leaves are very important in devotional service. Devotees are recommended to water the Tulsi tree every day and collect the leaves to worship the Lord. One time, an atheist Swami remarked, "What is the use of worshiping a Tulsi plant? It's better to water an eggplant. By watering the eggplant, one gets some fruits. But what is the use of watering Tulsi?" These foolish creatures, unacquainted with devotional service, sometimes play havoc with the education of people in general. The most important thing about the spiritual world is that there is no envy among the devotees there. This is true even among the flowers, which are all conscious of the greatness of Tulsi. In the Vaikuntha world, entered by the four Kumaras, even the birds and flowers are conscious to the service of the Lord. So we can repeat, although
flowering plants like the mandara, kunda, kudubaka,
although flowering plants like the mandara and
utpala, champaka, arna, punaga,
Uttala, Champaka,
nagek, sara, bakula, lily, and parijata are full of transcendental fragrance. They are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi. For Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. So, Om Gyantimirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakshum Vitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Nama, everybody, Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravan Pracharne Nirvishe Sunyavadi Paskachidya Satarane Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhuvirivata, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. It's a very beautiful verse. And it's very wonderful to reflect upon Tulsi Devi. So Tadiya means in relationship with Krishna. So it's explained that Tulsi leaves so it doesn't drop down there. So this Tadiya means in relationship with Krishna. The Tulsi leaves, the devotees of Krishna, the birthplace of Krishna, Mathura, in the Vedic scriptures, Srimad Bhagavatam. These are all Tadiya, in relationship with Krishna. And Krishna is very eager to see his devotees serve Tulsi, to serve the Vaishnavas, Mathura and Srimad Bhagavatam. In the CC, Prabhupada commented, we request the members of the Hare Krishna movement to follow Haridas Thakur, to follow his example rigidly. Chanting 16 rounds does not take much time, nor is offering respects to Tulsi difficult. The process has immense spiritual potency. One should not miss this opportunity. So just one comment here, he said we should follow Haridas Thakur's example rigidly. We're not talking about 100,000 names or 100,000 rounds, but a fixed number of rounds daily, which Srila Prabhupada has given to us as members of his society, of ISKCON, as 16 rounds. Follow that rigidly. Sometimes devotees get caught up in doing other little things, customary things, fasting on this obscure day or that day, and neglecting 16 rounds. But no, that should be done rigidly. That was the example of Haridas Thakur. So the Supreme Lord can be pleased only by devotional service, and therefore it's said that the Lord is surely satisfied by devotion and nothing else. And quoting from the Gautanya Tantra, which is stated in the Hari Bhakti Vilas, Jalasidala Matrina Jalasya Kulu Kainava Vitpraniti Swamatvanam Bhaktiyavo Bhaktavatsala. Sri Krishna is very affectionate toward his devotees. He sells himself to a devotee who offers a tulsi leaf and a palm full of water. So we can repeat this. Sri Krishna
Shri Krishna
was very affectionate toward his devotees,
was very affectionate towards
sells himself to a devotee who offers a tulsi leaf and a palm full of water. Can you think of someone who is that wonderful example? We'll be celebrating his, so we'll be celebrating his appearance shortly. So it's said in the Brahma Samhita that the Lord is always served by hundreds of thousands of goddesses of fortune, Lakshmis, in his Vaikuntha planet. And yet, because of his attitude of renunciation of all opulences, he's not attached to any one of them. The Lord therefore appreciates the service of Tulsi more than the services of Lakshmi. This is a quote from the Bhagavatam, and this is 15th chapter, so that's in the 16th chapter. And there's a similar statement in the Skanda Purana, which says, persons who are decorated with tilak and gopi chandan, who mark their bodies all over with the holy names of the Lord, in other words, the different tilak marks, and on whose necks and breasts there are tulsi beads, are never approached by the Yamadutas. In Nectar of Devotion, it said that Tulsi is auspicious in all respects. Simply by seeing, simply by touching, simply by remembering, simply by praying to, simply by bowing down before, simply by hearing about, or simply by sowing, in other words, planting and nourishing Tulsi tree, there is always auspiciousness. Anyone who comes in contact with the Tulsi in the above mentioned ways lives eternally in the Vaikuntha world. In the third canto, same chapter, but 43rd verse, it's mentioned, there's a statement by the four saintly persons known as the Shaktasana, the four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Sanata Kumar. And they went to visit the Lord in Vaikuntha, in the spiritual world. And these four, they were impersonalists. They were not attracted to a personal form of the Lord, but still they went to this Vaikuntha to visit the Lord. And they made obeisances. And when they put their head down at the feet of the Lord, they smelled the aroma of the tulsi mixed with saffron. And it entered their nostrils, and immediately it attracted their minds. So even though they were always absorbed in personal thoughts of Brahman, from the association with the Lord and from smelling the tulsi leaves, the hairs on their body immediately stood up. The gopis, from Krishna book, 30th chapter, the gopis began to address the tulsi plants. Dear Tulsi, you are much beloved by Lord Krishna because your leaves are always at his feet. There was a question in early 69. It was from Prajuna. Some of you may know him, Prabhupada's disciple Prajuna, who Srila Prabhupada would affectionately call Panditji. So he questioned, the question was about use of tulsi beads, because at that point, we were basically not having the connection with India where we could get everything, So the early beginning, we were going to simply a hobby shop. It's called Tandy Leather Imports, but it had all kinds of wooden hobby things. Like, I think now you have Hobby Lobby or Joann's Fabrics, Michael's, these kind of places. And we were just getting regular beads, and part of becoming initiated, we would sit and string those beads, and they were kind of large and round. And but then we were hearing about Tulsi, so he wrote about that. Regarding your question, generally Tulsi beads are required for initiation, but if it is not available, ordinary beads can be used. So then he cautioned, sometimes the shopkeepers give ordinary beads and they say, this is Tulsi. So it's very difficult to get Tulsi beads without personal attendance, meaning being there in person. he wrote that Tulsi leaf is very, very, not just very dear, but very, very dear to Vishnu. All Vishnu deities require profuse Tulsi leaves. Lord Vishnu likes garlands of Tulsi leaves. Tulsi leaves mixed with sandalwood pulp and placed on the lotus feet of the Lord is topmost worship. But we must be very careful that Tulsi leaves cannot be placed on the feet of anyone except Lord Vishnu, Krishna, and his different forms. Tulsi leaves cannot even be placed on the lotus feet of Radharani or on the feet of the spiritual master. It's entirely reserved for being placed on the lotus feet of Krishna. However, we can place Tulsi leaves in the hand, the benedicting hand of Radharani, and she can offer to Lord Krishna's feet. And then he gave the first three mantras. Vrindaye, you can say this. Vrindaye Tulasi Devi, Priyaye Kesavasya Cha, Vishnuvati Prani Devi, Satyavata Namo Namaha. So sometimes nowadays people go, Krishna Bhakti, okay, Vishnu is Krishna. That might be mine. Is it noontime? Oh, yeah. It's a Gayatri. Just turn it off. Sorry, it's letting me know it's time for Gayatri. So sometimes people will say, Krishna Bhakti Prati Devi, okay, but Prabhupada, when he gave us the mantra, he wrote, Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi. And that's for offering obeisances. And then when collecting leaves from the plant, he said the following mantra should be chanted. This, if you know it, you can say it. Tulasi Amrita Janmasi Saratvam Kesavasya Priya Kesavartam Chinomi Tvam Vardambhava Sovani. And then he gave us the mantra for circumambulating Tulsi. Everybody knows Yani Yani Chakratani Brahma Patatikani Cha Tani Tani Prahashante Padakshina Pade Pade. So he continued. These are the three mantras, one for bowing down, one for circumambulating, and one for collecting leaves. And then he further mentioned that the leaves should be collected once in the morning for worshiping and putting on the plates of food stuff to be offered. So sometimes devotees have the opinion or the idea that every single offering has to have a Tulsi leaf. And that's nice if you've got an abundance of Tulsi leaves, but in general that isn't the case. So he mentioned there should be on each plate or bowl at least one Tulsi leaf. He also told that the dried leaves can be used. And sometimes, there isn't no problem, those can be used, and the leaves that have fallen. In 1970, he wrote a letter to Jagadish Prabhu, who was in charge of the Toronto temple. And he said, I'm very glad to learn you have begun to worship Tulsi in your Toronto temple. The presence of Tulsi is proof of true devotion, of the true devotional atmosphere there. So please offer her all respects and carefully tend Srimati Tulsi, and she'll be pleased upon you in gaining the auspicious favor of the Lord. And just like, we can approach Radharani to connect us with Krishna, in the same way, Tulsi is there. And then he wrote in 71 a letter to Govinda Dasi. So a little history here. Govinda Dasi was given some Tulsi seeds by Srila Prabhupada. And she was living at that time in Hawaii, and she was successful in getting these Tulsi leaves to sprout and to grow. And this was, as you can see, really pleasing to Prabhupada. Your service in the matter of implanting Tulsi seeds, as introduced in the Western countries, has proved it definitely that actually you are Govinda Dasi, maid servant of Govinda. May Tulsi be kind upon you and introduce you to Krishna to be one of the assistant maidservant gopis in Vrindavan. So we can get further glimpse of the depth of importance of Tulsi Devi. He explained to Ekayani that Tulsi plants are liberated souls who want to serve Krishna in that way. She's part of Krishna's. And there was a lady named Patty, And she was coming, she was hearing about the glories of Tulsi. And so she wrote some questions at Prabhupada. And he told her, Tulsi Devi is part of Krishna's entourage. She is Krishnaized, or Krishna conscious. And in this pure state, she has all of the qualities of Krishna. And therefore, she has become worshipable, just like Krishna. So worship Tulsi Devi and others of Lord Krishna's entourage. It's part of the devotional attitude of pleasing Krishna. And then, sometimes devotees, they'll get different ideas from different places or situations. And here was Prabhupada's response to one of these ideas that came up. I don't know who has taught you that part of Tulsi plant may be cut off and then replanted. From the Tulsi plant, you can cut off only the leaves for offering them to Krishna, never for cutting and planting. That is an offense. The manjaris, the seeds, can be offered in water. Like when to the deities, you can put manjaris in the water. And it makes the water very fragrant and tasteful. And the manjaris can also be planted for growing in Tulsi plants. And then he mentioned Tulsi, this is very interesting, and Tulsi Devi never goes back to Godhead. She's always with Godhead. She's a pure devotee, and thus she's appeared on this planet to render service to Krishna by being offered to all temples throughout the world, offered to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. And then again, showing his deep affection for Tulsi, he wrote to Govinda Dasi in January of 72. How are your Tulsi plants in Hawaii? How are they? How are they feeling? I'm always thinking of them and thinking of you. Please let me know how they're growing and how are you taking care of them? So personal. This time when I go to Hawaii, I will sit down in the forest of Tulsi plants because they were growing like anything there. I'll sit in the forest of Tulsi plants and chant Hare Krishna. And then there was an incident. So this letter was in January. In February, there was an incident. And here's what Prabhupada said about that incident. I am very sorry to hear about your demoniac neighbor cutting down many of the Tulsi plants. But do not worry. He shall get his due punishment in time. Rest assured. Simply go on in the normal way and gradually his threat will disappear. Such men should be taken and beaten very hard with shoes. But it will not be very much to our credit if we're accused of fighting in this way. So in other words, yeah, this should happen, but we're not going to do that. But if the man is caught trespassing on our property, then he can be severely punished by us. You can put a barbed wire fence around the Tulsi plants, if that will help, or somehow protect them from further danger. Our experience has been, if we ignore such demoniac class of men, they will go away. So two things we have to protect, but don't give them too much attention. They'll get bored and go away. And then a very sweet short letter to George Harrison. I've heard that your good wife Patty is growing, Srimati Tulsi Devi, there at your house with good success. That's because that is another very auspicious sign. Tulsi, she will not go to live with just anyone. And because she's growing so profusely, therefore she is giving you her best favor because you are her best devotee. That is to be understood. That was the letter to George in 73. So when we got the manor, which had been donated by George Harrison, one of the first things we did was make an arrangement for Tulsi. And we were kind of proud of it. Tulsi was sprouting and growing. And then Prabhupada came for his first visit, and we were showing him all around, and with a little bit of pride to see the tulsis. He took a look. He goes, "These aren't tulsi. This is basil." So we had been proudly worshiping basil, dasi. And sometimes that happens. So things got adjusted. And actually, at the manor, they have like gorgeous, gorgeous Tulsi house and gorgeous Tulsi servants, and really powerful trees of Tulsi. And I'll tell you another little story that we had gone down. We'd been sent with Prabhupada to South India to Madras. It was called Madras now, Chennai. And oh yeah, like a reminder, I didn't chant my Gayatri, so a reminder. Anyways, we stayed in the house of this young couple, and they weren't Krishna bhaktas. I mean, they were bhaktas, but they weren't on the personal form. They were definitely impersonalists, which at first we didn't quite get that, And I had been quite ill. I got sent down on a train to cook for Prabhupada, but I was in recovery from one of those diseases you always get them. Not typhoid, the other one. Huh? Malaria, yeah. So I was kind of weak. And the lady came to ask, there was a place for Prabhupada, like adjacent to their house, there was this other little like bungalow. He was staying there. And then next to that bungalow was this, it had been a garage, but it was cleaned out nicely. And I was doing the cooking there. And she came in and she asked me if she could help. But I knew, I was sent there to cook for Prabhupada, and I knew he wanted his disciples. At the same time, I actually kind of needed some help. So I was thinking what she could do. And I had seen, she made fantastic rotis, puffed right up every single one. And on the other hand, I was kind of like hit or miss when it came to rotis. So I thought, okay, I've made the dough and I'll let her do the rotis. So she did. She was happy to do that service. And bring the plate in, and right, he looking at this beautiful, perfect roti. He could understand that I didn't. Who made the rotis? So I met this lady, and he thought for a minute. He goes, "That is all right. She has Tulsi." Right by their front door was this magnificent 6-foot tall Tulsi tree. I mean, we call them trees, but they're barely little like bushes, right? These are trees that were beautiful. And because of that Tulsi tree, he accepted her service. Many, many years later, like many decades later, I was in New Vrindavan, and this elderly gentleman came up to me. And by this time, I'm getting a little old myself. And he says, "Malati, you're Malati Devi?" "Yes." And he introduced himself. He was the husband. It was a husband and wife. And it was their house that we had stayed in when we'd been in South India, in Madras. And from a result of our visit was that they became very connected with Krishna as a person. And now, in his later years of life, he had come to USA. I think maybe he had a son in college or whatever, but he was going to all the ISKCON temples. And somehow he heard I was in New Vrindavan. So he decided to come. And there's so many good. So Tulsi is a purveyor of Krishna. She'll take you to Krishna. So I was telling you all the wonderful things. But then in late 73, there was something that happened. Prabhupada wrote to Sister Krishna. "Just now I received the news that in Hawaii, the Tulsi plants are dying for want of water. How has Govinda Dasi left the Tulsi plants, which she nourished so lovingly? If possible, kindly let me know where is Gaurasundar," that was her husband, "on my behalf. Request him to come back to the temple and save the Tulsi plants. Ask Govinda Dasi also on my behalf to do this without delay." And then that was the 7th. And then on the 9th of December, So he'd gotten some messages from devotees, and he wrote back to Babu, one of those devotees, that Gaura Sundar and Siddha Swarup have sold a temple in Hawaii and abandoned. This wouldn't happen if there hadn't been property trustees. That have sold the temple in Hawaii and abandoned the beautiful tulsi plants. That is a great fall down on their part. They didn't ask my permission. If they wanted to go away, they could have, but they had no right to sell the temple. It's actually a criminal act on their part. Anyone who follows them will now also fall without a doubt. Now, by Krishna's grace, we have built something significant in the shape of ISKCON, and we're all one family. Sometimes there may be disagreement, there may be quarrel, but we shouldn't go away. These iniquities can be adjusted by the cooperative spirit, tolerance, and maturity. So I request you kindly remain in the association of our devotees and work together. The test of our actual dedication and sincerity to serve the spiritual master will be this mutual cooperative spirit to push on this movement and not make factions to deviate. Try to convince Gaurasundar and Siddha Swarup to return to ISKCON and let us forget whatever has happened in the past. So his first concerns were about Tulsi. And he was so aggrieved by, this neglect. So we can see that, sometimes people think, what are you doing with this plant? I remember I had a friend from New York, and I invited her to New Vrindavan, and she'd never been really she'd been in a temple, but in the middle of the day or evening program. She'd never been to a morning program. So now she's in New Vrindavan, and first of all there's Nrsimhadev, and then there's Tulsi, and I'm looking on the altar and I'm seeing we have a fairly decent sized Giriraj deity there. And I'm thinking, I wonder what she's thinking about all this. Half man, half lion. There's a rock with a face on it, and we're dancing around this plant, So when I was explaining to her, she was finding herself becoming so attracted, having just taken part in that simple ceremony. And then there was one lady, god sister, her name is Vijayadasi, and she was one of the premier Tulsi Seva's servants. And she had written a rather lengthy letter to Srila Prabhupada, about 18 questions were in that letter, because she was very serious about serving Tulsi appropriately. Now, she was in LA, and generally you don't get heavy-duty winters like you might get here. So she'd asked him about planting Tulsi in the ground or not. And he said, if it's not possible for Tulsi to survive the winters when planted in the ground, then a suitable house should be provided for her. Like, if you've been to New Vrindavan, you'll see this very prominent, beautiful Tulsi house. But he might just do everything very carefully. Tulsi flourishes where there's love and devotion. And last night I mentioned this Chadaratma Prabhu. Some of you may know him. He's a very wonderful devotee, and based in Alachua. But he used to be the temple president in St. Louis. And once a year, all the ladies from the Columbus ashram, when it was just a ladies' ashram, would go, and we would go usually to one of these rainbow festivals, which were generally out west. So the first day, we'd just get as far as St. Louis. And we loved to stop there because it was just such a joyful place. Small place, like here, very small. But Jadaratna and his wife would welcome you with such enthusiasm. And they had all these tulsis. In the back of the temple, there was a parking. And around the parking was profuse tulsis growing. They weren't in pots, it was just coming out of the ground. I didn't think about it much the first year, but then the second year I thought, wait a minute. And I asked him, what are you going to do in the winter? what happens with these Tulsi, you know? And he goes, they go, they leave, but then they come back every spring. Now, I'm not recommending this, but I'm just telling you, it was a very mystical experience. And I think it was because of the purity and devotion of Chaturvatma and his wife Pushpapati that they would come and go. But who's to say, you know, she's a pure devotee. We have to take utmost care, and we still struggle. You know, it's very difficult. So some of these questions, and I'm going through this because some of you may have Tulsi at your home, or you may get Tulsi, or we have the Tulsi in the temple, and you know it's good to know these things. So one of the questions is Tulsi a separate Jiva soul or an expansion of one pure devotee? And Prabhupada answered, Tulsi is one devotee who appears wherever there is devotion for Krishna. So she can expand unlimitedly. And then the question, where does her spirit soul go when she leaves her body? Prabhupada said, Tulsi's body is spiritual. So she doesn't leave her body as we might think. And then there was a question whether or not we could place jewelry or moonstones. So there was this, what I call mythology. You know, sometimes we get the ISKCON mythology. And the mythology was only moonstones, or a special type of, maybe some of you know what a moonstone is, but only the moonstones could be on Tulsi. But Prabhupada said, you know, can we place jewelry or just moonstones? He goes, yes, jewelry is all right, you know, not just limited to moonstones. And then there was a question if the Tulsi is being cared for by the householders, must two artis still be offered? And Prabhupada's answer was, if possible. No. So it wasn't like you must. You know, you're at home, you have your family, you have your, if possible. And when Tulsi's cared for by the householders in their homes, may they use her leaves and manjaris on their offerings, or should they take it to the temple? And Prabhupada answered, Tulsi's leaves should be offered to the deity. So whether it's home or the temple, you know, goes to the deity. And then for some reason they were asking if Tulsi is being offered artik by the householders, must she have a ghee lamp? And again, if possible, you know. Now this question is probably one that maybe has been faced. Is it offensive to turn baby Tulsi back into the soil when they appear? Now sometimes you have all these little sudden sprouts coming up. So is it offensive to put her back in the soil? Yes. And then in the manual, it states that Tulsi should not be pruned. You know what I mean? Like clipped. Does this mean also trimming the dead branches? You may cut the dead branches, but what's the necessity? So, you know, that was it. And then here's another one, an example of the ISKCON mythology. We were told that once you spoke the four regulative principles of Tulsi care, which will keep her from getting sick. Has anybody heard this? No, because we've got cleared up. But one was keep her moist, keep her clean, keep her in the morning sunlight, and give her 2 RTs a day. So the question, is that bona fide? Prabhupada's answer, I never said that. It's not that anything's wrong, but you know. And then here's a big one, gets asked a lot. May Tulsi be made into tea after she's offered? The answer, no. Now because usually you put on the fire, you know, you put a pot on the fire. You can put Tulsi leaves in like a glass container and put them out in the sun. And that way you can make, if you want, and drink that. And then can the devotees carve the Tulsi wood for deity paraphernalia? The answer is yes. But then there's, well, if the body, you know, if the wood is too soft for carving, how can it be used? Should a small fire sacrifice be performed? So he said, use the wood for beads as far as possible. The balance may be placed in the earth. So it was never authorized to use tulsi wood for fire sacrifices and our funeral. I've seen sometimes funerals they put going in the crematory they put in the tulsi. So that was not something Prabhupada authorized. And then the question, we have a letter from you requesting that no sprays be used on Tulsi Devi. May we use a spray of buttermilk and whole wheat flour dissolved in water, which coats her leaves to keep the spider mites from causing Tulsi to leave her body. So the spider mites are a big problem wherever you are with a Tulsi. But his answer was that he says, I said no chemical sprays. So by leaving out the chemical part and just using no sprays, the message wasn't properly imparted. And is it permissible to use scissors to cut manjaris? And when transplanting, to use knives to loosen the soil from the pot? Very interesting answer. Use common sense. And if you have none, then consult others. Is it an offense to step across their shadow or the shadow of any pure devotee? You can step over the shadow, but not on it. And then there was, the last question was about, they had sent some prayers that they had heard. For 2 years, we've been waiting permission to use the following two prayers and the translations of the existing prayer. So can you tell us if they're bona fide? One was Om Govinda Varabam Devim Bhakti, and the other was, which we, Om Talasi Amrita Janmasi Sadaform. So the Prabhupada just like, don't try introducing something new. So he'd already given the prayers to you. Don't try introducing something new. The most important thing is the love and devotion. So you first when you first approach Tulsi Devi, you offer your obeisances, and you can request her that for worshiping Krishna, you want to take some leaves. And then Prabhupada said, if she allows, you may take. There's no, but then here's the thing. There is no question of pruning in the manner of gardeners, just to make a nice, beautiful plant for ornamental purposes. So that you can see behind that answer what might have been going on. No question of pruning in the manner of a gardener to make a beautiful plant for ornamental purposes. Tulsi comes as she comes. And then there was a notion that there was supposed to be a candle kept burning all night. I tried to find out how that idea even got up, because I find it once, I try to find out how things, got there. Anyway, that was the idea. And Prabhupada said there is no need to keep a candle burning all night. And I would underscore, definitely not. That's a great way to have an unwanted fire. But you can burn a candle in the evening for an hour for Tulsi. That will be nice. But again, it wasn't an instruction you have to do. And if you want to do that, my suggestion is use an electric candle, like we would do at the Sadhusanga when we go in that place in North Carolina, because you couldn't have fire inside. You wouldn't use an electric candle. So in conclusion, a quote from His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srimati Tulsi Maharani is our spiritual master. She's the queen of Sri Vrindavan Dham. It is only by her mercy that one can be qualified to enter Sri Vrindavan Dham. We wear Tulsi Maharani around our neck, knowing that she's very dear to Lord Krishna. By our allegiance to her, we can chant the name of Lord Hari. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. So if anybody has some questions or some input, like, this isn't comprehensive, but I tried to get as much information that I could that I thought might be beneficial.
Yeah, I have a question. So earlier in your discourse, you mentioned a letter in which was included the mantra Om Tulasi Amrita Janmasi
Yeah,
Surat
that wasn't the one he was. The other one, Om
Om Govinda
Govinda Bala.
Balabang Deving Bhakta Chaitanya
Yeah.
Karani. So
And
he
so he was just, in other words, you know what kiss means? Keep it sweet and simple.
I see. Okay.
So he wanted attention on Tulsi, yes,
Mhm.
but not to keep bringing something new. Like devotees love to get new mantras. You can
Mhm.
barely chant 16 offensive mantras.
So
I know a temple where for 48 days they did a big fire yagya for the Shringadev. Yet the Yuga Dharma is clearly Hare Krishna Mahamantra.
mm,
You know, so we need to understand what have we been given by Srila Prabhupada, imbibe that in our lives and give that to others before we start adding or even subtracting in some cases. You know.
so for me, it would be subtracting because I've been saying Om Govinda Balabang Deving now
But you
for
can do it,
decades.
that's fine.
Oh, okay. That's what I wanted to know.
He don't try to introduce something new.
Okay.
And but here, you know, he gave a very nice format for us to follow within the temple.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
I see. Okay. So yeah, just
He didn't
keep
say
it simple and
don't
consistent.
introduce something new. Here's what I've given you know, just to keep things on keel.
Okay.
The most important thing is love and devotion.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I need some of that.
Yeah.
All right.
Just like that lady's Tulsi in South India. She wasn't impersonalist, but obviously there was something deep there. And Prabhupada could see by the appearance of Tulsi. And he accepted her japatis.
So is there any restrictions that we should not plug with water or touch tulsi on Sunday?
What?
Because some part of India they still believe
Okay,
that
we're
we should
not some part of India. We're part of ISKCON.
Right.
If that was something that was really important, and you see, I gave quite a list of questions, you know, Prabhupada would have mentioned it.
Even they say on the
Who are they? Give
Ekadashi.
me, who are they? Who are you following?
No, I'm following ISKCON, of course, but you know, when I born and brought up in India,
Yeah.
everybody was telling some different rituals. So that's why I need to make sure that
Just follow what you find you can look it up online. There is a plethora of information, letters from Prabhupada instructions, you know. And when, you know, Sunday's just another day of the week. You don't think Tulsi wants to have some, you know, it's a hot outside, she doesn't want to drink.
and even the Ekadashi they said Tulsi is also doing Ekadashi, so we should not touch. Is that true?
We don't eat grains,
Right.
beans, butter. What is water? It's water.
Right. Thank you.
Don't make it more complicated. Just focus on 16 good nouns. And some super, I mean, anyway, I don't want to get off on this. Prabhupada made it really simple. And in our own Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Brahma Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, these things aren't there, but you can find them in other areas. You know, when you drive, stick to your lane. So in the same way, I'm saying stick to what we have been taught here. Now you may go to your homes in India with your family, and they may do things, and you may have to follow, you know, to honor that. That's okay. But here in our area, what we do in our temple, this is how we follow. You know. Just like in deity worship, one of the most important things is cleanliness. But there can be so many other things. But cleanliness and punctuality were specifically introduced as the most important things. Not that the other things aren't. You know. So speaking of punctuality, here it comes. It's Arti. So thank you all very much.
Glories will all stand up for Kirtan. Thank you to Mother Malati. Hari Bo.